So my wife and I have been subscribing to New Yorker magazine. And we got this because we thought we would read the witty articles and the reviews and the things going on around time and become more sophisticated. And the truth is, we put it in the bathroom, and when I have a moment, I look at the cartoons. Right? And there was a cartoon that I really loved recently, and it showed a guy sitting at a table with a woman. And the guy had his hair slicked back, and he had a very sophisticated smile on his face, and he was very dapper. And he's leaning across the table looking at this woman. And the first frame says, me, 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 me. And the second frame says, me, 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 me. And the third frame, he leans in closer and he goes, me, 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 me. And the last frame, he says, okay, that's enough about me. Let's talk about you. What do you think about me? and it's funny, but it's really true. We really do care what other people think about us. And we can't help but care because we're communal creatures. Right? We're a tribal kind of animal, and we live together. None of us live alone. We're not lone wolves. The problem is that for a lot of people, and I think for all of us based on our childhood and our experience, if we feel inadequate, unworthy of being part of that tribe, that desire to get other people's opinion of us can get turned sideways. Right? And we can look to other people to reinforce some insecurities that we have. We can look to them to tell us that we're okay. Right? And that's what that cartoon's about. And when you're in that kind of mode, you end up in a control-controller type of environment. Either people control you based on their opinions of you, or you try to control them by getting them to think well of you. Right? And it's a bad place to be, and it's a hard place to operate from. And I think a lot of us, certainly myself included, experience that. I think we can all resonate with that. So there's a lot of New Age teachings that tell us stop thinking about what other people think about you. There's a famous line that I hear a lot of people say that says, what other people's opinion of you was none of your business, right? And it sounds pretty good. And if you live in that role of controller, I'm always worried what people think about me, I'm a puppet on a string based on them, or I'm trying to manipulate them otherwise, that's great advice. You can let go of that, you can live more authentically, live less in fear. The problem with that advice, as far as I'm concerned, is that it isolates you. Right? I mean, we are part of a community. We do care what people think about us. And if all you do is get feedback from yourself, you're stuck in this internal loop of looking at yourself. And we need other people to give us feedback to tell us how we're doing. So it's very important. The problem is we're stuck with two decisions that seem neither one's very good. Either a neurotic relationship to other people and their opinions of us, or some kind of insensitive narcissism in which we just don't care. Right? Those aren't very good choices. And I'd like to propose, and Hegel talked about dialectics. When you have two things that are opposites, there's got to be some kind of resolution that meets both of those, right? So there's a place that I would argue we can be that is neither one of those choices but is better, right? There's three types of relationships we can have personally. There's an I relationship. It's a relationship we have with ourselves. It's looking inward, it's meditating, it's listening to music, getting to know ourselves a little better, and it's a great relationship. And I think a lot of New Age spirituality focuses mainly on that. The limitation of that is we can develop blind spots. Right? We all know this. There's people who we know who everybody knows something about them except themselves, right? Because they never go to outside input. They just look at themselves. So the I is limited. There's also an I-it relationship. And it's a relationship we have with objects, with our cars, with our jobs in a certain way. But that can also become a relationship with other people. We can turn other people into its. And just like we need our car to get us place to place, we can look at other people to give us our needs. And that's that kind of neurotic relationship I mentioned earlier, in which you're not engaging a person as a person, you're engaging them as a way to get feedback, to make yourself feel better, or to control what they do so you'll feel safe. And they become an it in that situation, right? And that's not really a dialogue. It's really a monologue also, just like the I. Because you're just talking to yourself, you're projecting onto them what you expect of feedback. And actually the Bible itself warns us against this relationship. There's the story of Moses leading the Israelites through the wilderness, and they come upon the promised land, which represents freedom, it represents the best that we can be as human beings. And he sends in 12 spies to check out the land. And 10 of them come back and they say, we can't do it. The land is filled with giants. And of course there's no giants in the land. And Moses says, what do you mean giants? And their answer, and I'm quoting the Bible, is they say, we appeared as grasshoppers in our own eyes, and so we did in theirs. Right? And the lesson is they thought, because they had been slaves, they had been controlled, they thought of themselves as little and as grasshoppers. And they assumed other people saw them the same way, right? So they're projecting their insecurities onto other people. Because of that, that's the reason they wandered in the wilderness for 40 years. They weren't ready for freedom. It was the next generation born in freedom who didn't feel like grasshoppers, who felt like adults and human beings that entered the land. The last type of relationship is I-you. It's a relationship I have with a fellow human being. That's a relationship that's not internal, it's not for my own needs, it's engaging the other person as a fellow human being. And Martin Buber, a lot of people know Martin Buber, a great early 20th century theologian, wrote a book called in German Ich und Du, which is translated as I and thou. And it's tough reading, but it's really me and you is how it's translated. And what he says in that book is that when we engage another person at a soul level, not as an object, not as a reflection of ourselves, not to get something, not in a transactional relationship, but as a human being, there's a spark that's connected. Like if you've seen the Michelangelo painting, there's a little spark that happens, and in that spark is where the divine lives. And as David likes to say, in that moment we see the face of God in another human being. And it's a profound, transformative relationship. And it's a very tough relationship to have. In Martin Buber's famous line, he says, when I engage you, I become me, and by becoming me, I then see you. Right? That's the relationship. You're not really yourself until you've engaged another human being. And those of us that are married, have families, know in our bones how true that is. Right? And it's difficult to do that relationship. I mean, it takes courage. You have to lower those shields. You have to engage another human being as a human being. And it's hard enough in intimate relationships. I mean, it's really hard at work. You know, I experience this. You're in front of people, you want to make a good impression, you want them to think well of you, and you're missing the relationship that can happen with that person as a human being. And if we really get into the I-you relationship with our clients, and David talks about this all the time, it's incredibly transformative. I mean, I don't do it enough, and I know some people here do it. You become one with that person. You know what their needs are. You can anticipate them. You can deliver them in a way. And you have a relationship, and it sounds mystical in a business relationship, that's a divine relationship with a fellow human being. So, I mean, imagine really living in that space all the time. When David talks about the Aquarian age, in Judaism, the world to come is that world, where we see each other without shields as fellow human beings engaged in the same journey together, supporting each other as we grow that way. I believe that that kind of relationship is the only way that we can heal the world and make it a better place for ourselves and our children. Thank you.